It looks like as soon as the machines were entered into our lives, they began to kill things. The internet apparently killed the family recipe because people who had access to the internet now could find those recipes for things they wanted by just opening up a Google document and finding those recipes that might be interesting for them. Maybe letting go of those family recipes that were passed in a book that would have been passed through your family, by the family, for the family, whether or not those recipes originated within the family, that's not so important. What was important is that it was passed within the family as opposed to within the family that is on the internet. And the internet killed the family recipe. The internet also killed satire because people who were trying to make fun of others used satire on the internet, and as a result of that, the platforms that are hosting some form of speech had to figure out a way to understand the genre of satire, and especially on Facebook and social media, the label of satire became used to make sure that people can see the difference between a satire piece and an opinion piece. Certainly being able to differentiate whether or not Kim Jong Un was actually voted the sexiest man alive from, I don't know, Kim Jong Un doing something that would be otherwise actually shocking. The possibility that social media platform help us understand the world around us is certainly a priority to our lives. The internet also killed storytelling. Apparently, we were telling stories for a long time, and then the internet showed up, and all of a sudden, we no longer had stories to tell. We could no longer tell stories on the internet because the stories were available, I suppose. However, thanks to this article, we now know that photos are bringing back the storytelling. The visual aspect of photos published, uh, well, I suppose on the internet. Published on the internet, which kills stories by giving people access to too many stories that were no longer believable because who knows where those stories are originating and who knows whether or not they are real. I was opposed to the pictures. Those pictures are real. They cannot be staged in any kind of way. They cannot be designed by their authors to elicit any kind of grand story or moral or any other benefit that could happen in people's lives. The idea that we are able to tell stories thanks to the internet, and especially stories that are impactful in some way, I suppose, if not for, for lack of a better word, a story that would make some kind of sense for people is becoming increasingly scary because the stories that are available to us now come from everywhere and nowhere. That are no longer rooted in very specific cultural storytelling techniques or cultural aspects of daily life. And so, therefore, the internet has killed our ability to differentiate the news that are told to us by somebody that we understand, somebody that we trust, not necessarily somebody who would intentionally lie to us, as opposed to, well, anyone could be lying out there. Anyone could be putting out stories that are designed for a very specific purpose, as opposed to a plain old nice story. The internet also killed the glitzy auto show, it seems like. Companies are scrambling to woo customers on Instagram and YouTube, which means that the auto shows are still existing, but however, Aston Martin's CEO says no need to spend on show after show because now people can see pictures of cars on the internet. And so, therefore, instead of going into crowded places to see these very expensive autos, we can now just open a social media video, a social media picture, maybe a story told somewhere else to understand what those cars that we cannot afford actually look like. Give us a little bit of a dream through the internet, which seems to me that in this case, the internet does not quite kill the glitzy auto show as much as it made it more popular. Just like it made the story more popular, just like it makes storytelling more popular, just like it makes cooking and recipes a little bit more popular. And wouldn't you know that the internet also killed the world's languages? I suppose because everything on the internet is written in English, therefore there is a lot of places and people that have access to the English language much more than before, when people had access to documents that were mostly written in English and therefore had very little access to the world's languages, which brings up the question, what were languages doing before that? How could they possibly have any kind of access to um, world recognition? More importantly, we have seen that in the context of this class, in the context of language, certainly the internet has allowed more people to have more access to language and hasn't really quite been a problem for our understanding of the world around us. Oh, there it is. The internet has apparently killed the SharePoint document, and I suppose it has also in the process killed my PowerPoint documents. We'll get there. We'll follow in. This is just the end of the semester, and those things are slowly falling into place. The next one will tell us about politics, because we have talked about politics, and the internet has told us about politics and has obviously killed politics. There it is. The Benghazi report shows that the internet is killing objectivity. People can no longer be objective about things because they can no longer receive elements of data from various parts of the world and check for themselves on the understanding of the world that exists, of world events. The internet was apparently very majorly affected by Benghazi, as opposed to American politics, and especially one specific party in American politics that has very much talked about the Benghazi affair, and as a result of that, the Benghazi report, and made that a political talking point, much more than really an internet talking point. People who had access to the internet at the time were able to see exactly what was going on in Benghazi and could have told you that whether or not Hillary Clinton had sent troops an hour or two earlier than she did, the results would have been just about the same. The internet has also killed a lot of things. The listicle, perhaps, this article right here, listing 50 things that are being killed by the internet. The internet has wrought huge changes in our lives, both positive and negative, in the 15 years since its use became widespread. The internet has certainly, in many ways, changed the way that we access many things. And it seems like talking about the internet as a sentient thing that has set in its sight most of aspects of our lives is kind of verging on hyperbole. Maybe the internet has killed hyperbole. I'm not sure. We're going to see about that pretty soon, perhaps. The fact that we can write now dozens of articles and even lists of things that have been killed by the internet kind of tends to show you just how much things have changed in this digital age, and whether or not it is the internet specifically or the much larger technologies that are behind it that have connected most of our existences that are now visible through the internet just being a medium, being a thing that allows us to have access to other things, those things that have an existence of their own are being affected by the internet itself. The internet has killed mainstream culture as a whole. There is no longer any kind of mainstream culture, I suppose. People now only have access to other kinds of cultures, fringe cultures, perhaps. Hi, everyone, says this newsletter, this Substack letter called Digital Native. The past few weeks of Digital Native have been more specific, touching on companies innovating in commerce, shirt emoji, in socially impactful sectors, um, fruit emoji, and in media, camera emoji. This week's pieces is more philosophical, stepping back to reflect on the broader trend rather than honing on any particular startups. It claims to answer the questions: how did the internet kill mainstream culture, and what are the consequences? Certainly, the internet has probably changed many things, but it's not quite clear how we could say that mainstream culture has died because the internet culture is more messy, chaotic, and fragmented. But we'll get back a little bit to that on Tuesday. The fact that the internet is now part of our everyday life, including mainstream culture, means that people are seeing the world change underneath their feet and kind of have somewhat of a little bit of a reactionary effect on how this could possibly affect our day-to-day lives, because now our mainstream culture is a mainstream culture that is connected to the internet, and just like we, the people, are connected to the internet, and therefore those things are all changing hand in hand as much as they need to be. The internet also killed the video store. The video store, which obviously was doing quite well until the internet showed up, as opposed to the other things that we are now using for our daily consumptions of video. There were no videos actually that were done before the age of the internet that were telling us about the end of the video store. No comedies about it or anything. This is actually a podcast called The Internet Killed the Video Store, telling us about movie, music, subculture, and pop culture. I guess the internet has also killed the music store and probably other things to a certain extent. But where will the internet stop? We could ask ourselves the question, exactly how will this end now that the internet has killed 50 plus, however many other aspects of our life? How can we possibly survive without mainstream culture, without the video store, without objectivity, without the world's languages? How is any of this making sense to us without the auto shows, the family recipes? How are we living our lives right now? Well, I guess that is the subject of this week.